Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto Llewellyn and with me this evening is Steve Carroll. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. Matt is unable to join us tonight, unfortunately, so you'll have to make do with just the two of us. Hopefully, we can keep the entertainment levels high enough to sustain your attention. We've got an FA Cup match to look back at this week. Very exotic. Steve, we spoke last week about, the fact that we should beat Stevenage, really. When a team at the top end of the Championship goes up against a team at the bottom end of League Two, you want it to be a straightforward victory, really, with no kind of banana skins in sight. Is that what we got?
Yeah, to be fair, obviously we couldn't have had a better start, really, could we, with that early goal to settle things down nicely. I don't think it was our best performance, if I'm being honest. I mean, Stevenage did have a few chances to end towards the end of the first half, and obviously there was the the penalty late on and that type of thing. But I mean, the early goal is always very nice in those type of games, because that's what you just want to get, that just to take the sting out of things. I mean, if there was a crowd, I think an early goal would be even more important, because it just flattens them as well, really. But yeah, I don't think there was ever any real danger from us, although I wouldn't say it was the most convincing performance, if that makes sense.
No, I agree with that, really. We made changes, gave a lot of our key players a break. Wasn't in an entirely reserve side. I mean, there were some notable names in the lineup, in the starting lineup. Woodman in goal, Cabango at the back. You had Norton there as well, who plays quite a lot. It gets quite a lot of starts. Fulton. I can't remember if there's anybody else I'm missing off. So it wasn't as if we just put out the kids and that was it. Like you said, a very early goal. I thought it was a well worked goal, actually. The ball down the wing for Danda. He very cleverly kind of tricks the defender into sliding in and then puts in a decent cross. I'm not quite sure how Wayne Routledge wins a header, but he does. And let's just start off talking about Wayne Routledge. It's now 10 consecutive seasons that he's scored a goal for the Swans. That's a pretty fantastic record, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. In these day and age of a lot of players moving around, actually you play for a top side where you're not going to move because there's not many options type of thing. There's for a club like us now, there's obviously he is the longest serving player by quite a distance, isn't he? So yeah, he's contributed a lot. I mean, he's not played a great deal this season, and I think, if I'm honest, this is going to be his last season, because, like I say, he has barely played. And when you look at it now, we're not playing with wide players, and I think he's 36 as he just turned. So I mean, you've got to look now and think this is probably it for him. But he's still probably more than valuable to have around the place, and I'm sure there'll be a job for him afterwards. But yeah, to score in 10 successive seasons, it's it's pretty good. But if we're being honest, I mean, for a wide man to be here for 10 seasons, you would like to think you'd get on the score sheet at least once in every season, really, wouldn't it?
Well, in fairness, at the age of, 35, 36 now, that's I'm amazed he's getting on the score sheet for anybody. But I'd love to know, if anybody out there knows, who was the last Swansea player to achieve that feat, to score in 10 consecutive seasons. You'd have to go back a long way, surely.
Yeah, that's a good question, because we've had a lot of players that have done that type of service, but they've been more defensive players, haven't they? Like Leon Britton's last goal was in the playoff semi-final, which is 10 years ago this year. So he went the last 6-7 years of his career, didn't score. And I'm assuming the likes of Monk and Tate wouldn't have done it. So yeah, if you're
a striker or a player that does score goals on a regular basis, then you usually off. I mean, actually, come to think of it, is there a chance that Nathan Dyer would have done it?
Obviously not, because he went to Leicester, didn't he?
He went to Leicester in the middle.
But
yeah.
I got a feeling, even in those little, the year he did his Achilles, that's the year we went down. He barely played, did he?
Didn't he score in the cup against Notts County?
Actually, I think that was the. I'm wrong. He did his Achilles the year before that, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he barely played, and then you are right, in that cup with Notts County he did. So I think Dyer may have scored in 8 or 9 seasons, definitely there would be that one missing, wouldn't there, from for him, which is a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah.
That would have been a good record for him to have, but it's one of those things. But I mean, like you say, I can't think of many other players who've done 10 years service. I mean, in my lifetime, I mean, Roger Freestone's the obvious one. He did chip in with a couple of goals,
but I don't think he scored one every season.
Yeah, absolutely did not. Chris O'Leary, again.
I was thinking O'Leary. He popped up with the odd goal every now and again, O'Leary, but would he have scored in 10 consecutive seasons? I'm not sure.
I'd say there's no chance. And then the other one who springs to mind is Keith Walker, who was here for most of the 90s. But again, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, the problem is, I suppose, when you look at it, I mean, strikers, if they're quite prolific goal scorers, they tend to move on, really, don't they? So then that chance of someone scoring in 10 successive seasons seems a lot less. I mean, I'm trying to think, maybe Ivor Allchurch may have done it. I think he didn't leave the Swans in his first spell until he was about 29. So that obviously does give him a chance, and it is the top scorer in our history by, a very big distance, by about 50 goals or so. So he's probably the most likely, I would think.
Yeah.
I think of many others who would have.
We may have to go back all the way to the 1950s. That's mad, isn't it? But great feat for Wayne Routledge, and like you said, Steve has settled the nerves. And then, of course, we got the second, and I think as soon as the second one went in, we were pretty calm about it. I mean, it was a goal for Victor Gyökeres. It may very well be his last involvement for the Swans. I mean, he's taken a little bit of criticism of late. I'll be honest, I didn't think much of his performance against Stevenage. I was really hoping that he'd have a real impact and show that he was worth sticking with and worth giving further opportunities to. But I didn't think he had a great game. I'll be honest. I thought he was sloppy, made poor decisions. And just didn't really have the kind of impact that I thought he would. I don't know if I'm being harsh there, because we should really be praising him when he's, got on the score sheet for the first time for the club.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed, to be honest with you. Seemed to give the ball away a lot from what I remember. There was most of his efforts on goal didn't seem very good. I remember there was one towards the end of the first half, in which I think was a long range shot. I mean, I was expecting people to score then, but I think the phrase high, wide, and not so handsome springs to mind. It wasn't a great Gyökeres performance. I think if we can't deny that. I think he has struggled, doesn't he, during his time here? He hasn't had a lot of minutes. That's also true. But I mean, you're looking for him to shine in a game like that. And obviously, like you say, he did get on the score sheet. And it was after that I was thinking to myself, can he improve now? He should have a little bit more confidence. And I was thinking this could maybe be just what he needs. But even after that, really, it wasn't great. And I mean, if you look at it, obviously he gave away the penalty as well with a very clumsy handball, which wasn't impressive.
Was it Gyökeres who gave away the penalty? I mean, he definitely did handle it. There's no arguments if that was the reason he was given as a penalty, but there was also a bit of wrestling from Ryan Manning in the box. It was one of those scenarios where the referee had his pick really of fouls.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say it was probably for the handball, or at least that's what it probably should have been for. If it was for the shove, it did seem a bit harsher, I thought. But either way, it was poor, wasn't it? It was it wasn't great, and that could have undone our good work, couldn't it? I mean, there was if the penalty had gone in, there was enough time for Stevenage to get an equaliser, and then we could have had extra time, which is something we definitely didn't want. So yeah, from Gyökeres, it wasn't the best. He didn't really inspire, and I don't think anyone would be clamouring for him to make an appearance this weekend.
Thankfully, that handball did not cost the Swans, because Freddie Woodman just has this knack from penalties. I mean, it's so good, isn't it, to have a goalkeeper that you actually think can save a penalty. I know I remember back the days of Doris de Vries, for example, where if we had a penalty given against us, you just knew that was a goal. You knew there was no way he was going to save it. I think he saved one penalty in the whole time he was here against Leicester. But apart from that, every single penalty went past him, and usually he dived the wrong way. But with Woodman, it's the total opposite. You actually think every single time the opposition gets a penalty, you've got a decent chance of saving it with him in goals, and it's one of his biggest attributes.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, when you look for a goalkeeper, you probably don't look at their penalty record as such. It's just a bonus, really, isn't it? But it is a hell of a thing. Like say, 4 saves from 7 penalties faced. I mean, to have anything like over a 50% save ratio is crazy, really. I mean, I don't know what the stats are with penalties. I'm assuming something like 4 out of 5 probably are scored every time. But I mean, to save 4 out of 7 is, it's a bit special. And the crazy thing was that was the first time he saved a penalty, and we've ended up winning the game, wasn't it? I think on the times he has saved the penalty, we haven't won, which is quite bizarre, really. But it's full credit to him. It's he's probably got to be one of the best around in the country, I'd say, at saving penalties with a record like that. I mean, I can't imagine anybody else has got anything as good as that, to be honest. I mean, like I say, over 50% is crazy.
Yeah, and it's not just luck as well. You can see that he does study, and he reads the penalty taker very well. I think a lot of the ones that he hasn't saved, he's dived the right way and has been pretty unlucky with them. So it was a good day for him on Saturday. I think it's fair to say that he was our man of the match. What that says, that when your goalkeeper is the man of the match against a League Two team, I don't know. I mean, the most important thing I think was just winning that game, getting the result. But we did give run-outs to a couple of fringe players and a couple of youngsters. Did anybody stand out for you out of those players who were given a rare opportunity?
I've got to be honest, nobody. I didn't think anybody was brilliant. I mean, I was hoping that Jordan Garrick was going to shine, really, and he didn't obviously set up the second goal, but I didn't think he was brilliant, really. I think that was by far his best moment. I mean, the likes of Routledge were solid. I thought George Byers did a reasonable job, considering obviously that he's not played for quite a while. So that was always going to be tough for him, really, especially when you're not playing for 6 months. I mean, it's going to take time, isn't it, to get up to speed. So I never expected him to be brilliant, but I thought he did a reasonable enough job. I'd say Woodman probably would be the standout one, but obviously he's first choice anyway, really. So I think, in truth, it's a bit of a shame that the players that were given a chance, I don't think they massively grasped it. I don't think Steve Cooper will be thinking to himself, "Oh, someone's massively knocked my door here to try and change the team next week." I think he'll be, reinforcing the views that he's already got about who should be playing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think anybody really put their hand up and demanded that Steve Cooper pay attention to them. I'm like you. There were a couple of players that I really wanted to see have a good game. One of them was Garrick, who just hasn't played much at all this season, and was a player who, when he first burst into the first team, you thought this kid's got potential and he could actually do something. And on the whole, I definitely don't think he's kind of developed much since he got those first few appearances in the first team, and he's probably regressed a little bit. I don't think the playing style and the formation that we play helps him, obviously, but I thought Garrick showed a couple of nice little moments. I mean, he did very well for our second goal. And he had the odd flash, which, made you see again, oh yeah, he does have that in his locker. But I was a little bit disappointed that they were only flashes, really, and that we didn't see more from him. I think he was the closest one to being a real positive out of all the fringe players that got a shot. I thought he, just because of those little moments that were pieces of quality, I thought he just had the odd glimpse where he stood out. But other than that, I can't say he did. I was a bit disappointed as well with Yandanda. I mean, I think earlier on in the season, I was looking at Danda and thinking, oh, finally, the player that we've been waiting to see is finally turning up. Because he had a string of games where he's really, really good and ran the game and got forward, linked up well with his teammates, etc., and was a real threat. He's just dropped off the radar a little bit over recent months. And against a League Two team, I wanted to see him take control of a match and really run it, and he didn't really do that. I thought there were some poor decisions from him. I thought like his execution on a few things wasn't there. Looked a little bit casual in the way that he was doing some things. I'd have liked to have seen him really dominate that match, but he didn't. As for George Byers, I thought he was. I thought he looked a little bit sloppy and a little bit off the pace, but that's to be expected when you're coming back from an injury. So, it's going to take time for Byers to get back to full strength after being out for a long time. So that's understandable, really. But other than that, I don't think anybody really stood out as having a great game. There were some okay ones, and that was about it, really. But I mean, the main thing for me, Steve, was that we just needed to avoid an upset against Stevenage. Nobody wants to lose to the team that's near the bottom of League Two, the team that had taken fewest points out of the all four top divisions in 2020. It would have been embarrassing if we had lost to them. Having said that, I can't say that I'm massively feeling FA Cup fever at the moment. I can't say that I was over the moon to get through either. There is something about this year's FA Cup that with a packed schedule and us riding high in the league, I can't pretend that it's a major priority for us. And if we had lost to Stevenage, aside from being annoyed and a bit embarrassed that we'd lost to a League Two team, I don't think it would have been the end of the world either.
No, I think I'm on the same wavelength as you, really. I mean, you don't want to lose to a team that's, pretty poor, if we're being honest, although I didn't think they played too badly at the weekend. I mean, you could do without that, really, couldn't you? I mean, I think it would have been better for us almost if we'd drawn someone reasonable and gone out, and then obviously you can just concentrate on the league. That's not usually the type of attitude that I've got, if I'm honest. I do quite like the FA Cup. An FA Cup run can be great, but when there's no fans there, and obviously it's such a compact schedule, and we're in a good position in the league, you just think this probably is a year where we're not that bothered by it, and we've got other priorities. So I mean, you look at the case of theirs, and we're going to go on to talk about it a bit, the whole thing with COVID and football, but there's so many games getting called off. We've been quite lucky at this stage. I mean, say we were to end up having a few called off, you could end up with a fixture pile up, and the FA Cup isn't going to help in that sense either, really, is it? So I'm not feeling the thing for the FA Cup this year. I mean, next year might be different, but I think this is a year where I can happily leave it, if I'm honest with you. But at the same time, I didn't want to go out to a lower side. I mean, if we go out to Nottingham Forest, it won't be as bad, should we say?
Yeah, and before we move on to just have a quick chat about Nottingham Forest, I actually thought Stevenage were pretty good for the considering their league position. I thought they were sloppy at the start, and that gave us the advantage. And that's the one thing you can never do against us, is give us the first goal, because we are very dominant when you do that. But I thought they passed the ball around okay at times, and create their chances. And I don't think they looked like a team that was circling the plug hole at the bottom of the Football League. So in fairness to them, I've seen far worse teams down at that end of League Two. I mean, for Forest, it's a miserable FA Cup draw. Nobody wants to draw a team in your own league, but it does give us the prospect of a fifth round tie if we can get past Forest against Man City or Cheltenham Town. We've had memorable fixtures against both of these teams in the past. I'd say probably more likely to play Man City, Steve. Am I being unfair in saying that?
No, I don't think so. I think if Cheltenham managed to upset the apple cart, then full credit to them. But I think that's very unlikely. Man City have taken all the cup competitions very seriously as well, haven't they? They're not like they've rested people. I mean, they had a full team out more or less against Birmingham at the weekend. So yeah, I think if we get through, we'll have that chance for revenge. I've seen a lot of people talking about, but I'm not convinced the Lightning would strike twice. I think the chances are we wouldn't run them as close again.
Well, we'll see. We'll have to get past Nottingham Forest before we expand on that chat. But the important thing is the Swans are through to the fourth round, and the cup run goes on. In the meantime, though, there are off-field issues to discuss. We are in the middle of a transfer window, and so far, Steve, it's not exactly gone well for the Swans. I mean, last week I think we were talking about Michael Obafemi, and that deal quickly got scuppered because of an injury he picked up with his parent club Southampton. And in the same week, we lost two loan players. One of them was obviously Casey Palmer, who has had a sporadic impact since arriving from Bristol City. The other one was Morgan Gibbs-White. I think we were a lot more disappointed to see him go than Casey Palmer, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Palmer one, with it happening first, I think everybody was a bit like, well, okay, he's done a reasonable job for us, but he wasn't going to play so much because Gibbs-White was coming back, and obviously he wasn't in the team anyway. It was Dan that was more playing than him, or we were playing with the three deeper midfield players. But obviously then when we got the news that Gibbs-White was going back, I think I was then a bit more frustrated that we had lost Palmer. But yeah, to lose Gibbs-White is a real blow, I would say. He's too good for our level. And we've been unlucky with that, and the fact he's only played 6 times for us, because I think he would have been a big player for us in the second half of the season. The cliche of like a new signing, I think.
Yeah.
He really would have been that good link man between the midfield and the attack. I think he'd have chipped in with a few goals. He's got a great eye for a pass, and it's really disappointing that they've recalled him. I mean, I think it's fair enough. I mean, the fact is he's been in the starting 11 for Wolves tonight against Everton, so it's not like they've mucked us around or anything. And the fact is he's their player, isn't he? They can do as they please, but it is frustrating, isn't it, from our point of view, because it does seem like a pretty tough window now to bring players in. I mean, with a lot of clubs picking up injuries and obviously wary of potential COVID breakouts. I think clubs are carrying bigger squads, aren't they? So I think they're going to be more reluctant to let players go, and it's going to be difficult for Cooper to try and weave his magic really and bring a few in, but hopefully he will be able to do so. But it's difficult, isn't it, to not be really frustrated by that Gibbs-White one, because I think there was real potential for him to have been even the star man in the team in the second half of the season. But I mean, to end on a positive note, we've done very well without him, so hopefully we can continue to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the chat last week was basically, who makes way for Gibbs-White to get back into the team? Which of Fulton Smith and Grimes, loses out, because they've all been doing so well. So I mean, that it's not as though we're massively weakened by the fact that he's left, but like you said, it would have felt like a new signing. In the 5 minutes or so they had on the pitch against Watford, he looked so fresh, just so aware, and just his touch looked so good. You're thinking he could make a real difference in the second half of this season. He's the kind of player that other clubs maybe don't have, and it was really frustrating. I mean, we can't really complain. We've done something similar to Newport, and bringing Brandon Cooper back, who's been phenomenal for them in League Two, quite possibly the best centre back in the division so far this season. But of course, we've got problems at defence at the moment with injuries. So we could use the numbers at the back. So he's been brought back, and across the league, you're seeing a lot of clubs recall their loan players. So, Gibbs-White is not the only one. It's something we got to accept. He's not our player. He is Wolves' player. We were just borrowing him. But there's something so frustrating about the fact that he only played 4 games at the start of the season before getting injured. And then just as he's coming back, he gets taken back to Molyneux. It is frustrating. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Joe Rodon's played more minutes for Swansea this season than Gibbs-White has, which tells you a lot, considering Joe Rodon went in the last transfer window. But there we go. That's football. I mean, the worrying thing, I guess, is that there's no real sign of other incomings. I mean, if we look back to last January, we had the likes of Brewster, Gay and Gallagher arrive very early in the window. They were obviously lined up long before January to come in. And well, Obafemi may have been one of those two had he not been injured. But other than that, it doesn't seem like we've got a lot of players lined up. And like you said, teams are going to be less keen to send players out on loan now because they'll want to retain as big a squad as they can in a time of COVID outbreaks and injury crises.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really think of a tougher window, I don't think, to bring players in. It feels like hardly any deals have even been done yet, really. I mean, across the divisions, I've never really known it so quiet. I mean, you're even looking at someone like Liverpool, who I would say are pretty desperate to sign a centre half, and even they seem to be a bit strapped for cash, I should say, in terms of what they maybe would usually do because they're playing without crowds. I mean, that must be factored into a lot of the clubs in the lower divisions as well. So, yeah, it's a strange window. I mean, you're really going to see hardly any action, I think, and it's going to be challenging for everybody concerned. And I think what you're going to see more of in general is clubs loan players out, calling them back, which is what we've seen already. And of course, we've done that ourselves, haven't we, with Brandon Cooper because of our potential defensive injuries. So it is going to be really tough. And I mean, I don't know if there's any unattached players out there, but the fact is, if they are unattached at this stage, they obviously haven't played for a long time. I mean, you're looking at Nathan Dyer, and I'll say we should bring him back. But if anybody took him now, I mean, he hasn't played, has he, for such a long time? I mean, it'll take them ages to get their fitness up. And the games are just so thick and fast. You wonder if it's worth taking anybody, who doesn't have a club, really. So it is going to be very difficult. But hopefully we can do something, because that really could make the difference for us as the season progresses, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just to show how abnormal it is, Preston signed Ben Whiteman today, or at least it looks like they're going to sign Ben Whiteman from Doncaster, which is potentially a very good signing for them. But the fact they spent 1.5 million on him just kind of set me aback a little bit. I was like, whoa, hang on, Preston is spending 1.5 million on a player. It just felt totally abnormal for a championship player to even be spending that amount, an amount which would have seemed pretty normal not that long ago. But that's the situation we're in. One player that has left the Swans for the time being, one player that was clearly unwanted by Steve Cooper, was Declan John. I think it's fair to say that this is a signing that just hasn't worked. He was probably brought in after relegation as a backup left back. But he's, I don't think he's even been a backup, like a number 2 choice under Steve Cooper. He's fallen so far down the pecking order. And I just wonder what are your views? What went wrong with Declan John? Because I don't think he's the best player in the world by any means. I don't think we ever believed that he was going to be a world beater. But there were times last season when Jake Bidwell was playing poorly, let's face it, and John never ever got a look in. I don't even know if he made the bench at all, And I think we all felt at the time that it was a bit strange that he was just totally frozen out like that, because I don't think he's, as much as I say he's not a world beater, I don't think he's an absolutely shocking player either. And are you surprised that he's dropped down to League 2 in Bolton as well?
A little bit surprised he's gone to League 2, but at the same time, I mean, he's gone to what is arguably the biggest team in there, maybe one that can afford his wages more than the others. So that might have something to do with it. But I mean, I got to be honest, I was very uninspired when we signed him. I'd seen him play for Wales under 21s a few times, and he didn't impress me, if I'm honest with you. I thought he was quite shaky. So when we brought him in, and I think we brought him in, didn't we, on that infamous day that we lost about 4 players, the likes of Fernandez, Amat, Fur. Oh no, it wasn't Fur, was it? It was, I'm trying to think who they all were now. Jordan Ayew might have been one of them, I think.
Yeah. It was the thinnest of silver linings on what was an otherwise really...
I remember thinking to myself that we now have one centre-half. We already had a left-back in Martin Olsen, and we've now signed another left-back, and I was thinking we've now got 2 left-backs with 1 centre-half.
Did Klukas that day?
Yeah, you're right. That was the other one, Klukas. I knew there were 4 that left in total on the day. So yeah, when that came in, I remember them. That was almost like them trying to give us a little bit of positivity. I thought, like, oh yeah, we've got one player in. Those things up. Yeah, a backup left back when we have one senior centre half.
It is the most unglamorous of signings, isn't it? We've got you a new backup left back. It's like you might as well say that you've bought a new dinner lady for the canteen. It's really just like it's not going to get anybody excited, is it?
No, it's not. And I think he's a bit unlucky in that sense, Declan John. But I mean, he didn't especially impress me when I've seen him. He just didn't offer a lot, is what I thought. And he's better off continuing his career for lower down. Like I said, I think he probably could have gone to League One, but he's gone to League Two now. So I think he's picked up an injury already, though, isn't he? So
yeah,
he's a little bit unlucky. But hopefully he'll have a bit more of a clear run at it. But it's funny, isn't it, really? I mean, we've all liked Graham Potter a lot, but none of his signings are actually here now, or if they are, they're out on loan. And I have to say that's a pretty big weakness from him, isn't it? Whether he had the final say on transfers or not, I don't know. But at the same time, you look at it. I suppose Danda was his signing, wasn't he? So he's the only one now that is still here. But yeah, his signings by and large, they've not worked, have they?
Well, you say that he's the only one that's still here. Obviously, this week, Joe Lasoro returned to the club from his loan in Genoa.
Not wanted to, was he? Let's be honest.
No, exactly. He's. I mean, it was a weird loan in the first place, sending him to a Serie A club when he'd made very little impact at Groningen in the Dutch top division the previous season. I mean, there's quite a big step up then from the Eredivisie to Serie A. So it was a weird loan from the off, really. I don't know how much football he ever expected to get at Genoa, but he didn't get any, and he's back now. And do you think it's weird at all that Cooper was so adamant, I guess, from the off that Joe Lasoro was not going to be part of his plans? I mean, I don't know if something's gone on there, but I thought it weird that he wouldn't even be up for consideration. And I'm just wondering, looking ahead, there is a chance that we get some kind of like injury crisis at some point. I know Joel Lasoro is way down the pecking order, but what if we get to a point where we need to include him, even if it's just on the bench or something like that? Is it really isn't it counterproductive to have just dismissed him entirely and said, no, he's not involved in our plans at all?
Yeah, it probably is counterproductive. I mean, if he's available, I mean, let's be honest, he's more of a winger, isn't he? But I think he can play up front, and we are looking at that position. So, he may have improved in the last 18 months. I've got to be honest, he hasn't impressed me during his time here. Probably the same for you, really. He seems a bit like one of those players with a lot of pace, but then no product at the end of it at all. So, yeah, it is a funny one how he's been discarded completely. But if I'm honest, I wasn't too disappointed because I wasn't particularly impressed with him. But stranger things have happened, haven't they? I mean, would have thought at the start of last season that Boy Baston would have been in the team and would have been the top scorer in the division at the end of August. I know it didn't last long.
He didn't sustain it, did he?
No, he didn't. But the fact that he was even under consideration was, a bit of a miracle in itself, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
Stranger things have happened. I mean, I don't know if anyone's going to be interested in it, but we'll wait and see, won't we? But I mean, it does seem unlikely, doesn't it, at this stage?
I mean, he's still only 21 as well. I mean, we have seen over the past few years 21-year-olds just click all of a sudden, and suddenly they find their feet. I don't think Asoro's shown much during his time here to suggest that he's going to be that type of player. But at the same time, I do think there have been worse players than Joel Asoro here. I mean, and he does have that speed, which, alone can be the smallest of weapons, I guess. But yeah, it's just a bit of a weird one all around. The fact that he went to Genoa in the first place, the fact that he's come back now after playing 0 minutes, and the fact that he's just been dismissed out of hand by his manager. But you're right. You look back to the signings we made in that summer under Graham Potter. Okay, it wasn't the easiest of summers to make signings, but with the exception of Selena, who had a brilliant first season, but then clearly didn't fit in with Steve Cooper. I don't think any of them really hit it off at all here at Swansea. So, very strange one. But we'll keep tabs on the transfer window as it goes on, and we'll have to wait and see what the Swans can manage in what is bound to be a very difficult January. One thing, obviously, that makes transfers very difficult, as we've spoken about, is COVID-19, and I think it's just worth taking a moment to discuss the pandemic and its impact on football, because football obviously was massively affected at the start of this pandemic. Everything shut down for 3 months. We were left, twiddling our thumbs on weekends looking for things to do because there was no football on TV. But since then, I think it's fair to say football has been relatively untouched by the COVID crisis, in the sense that we haven't seen any kind of large-scale outbreaks, which I think people were fearing from the off, really. But that does seem to be just changing slightly, Steve, because there are quite a few teams now who are having to postpone matches, who are missing numerous players and coaching staff because of COVID-19. Brentford, the latest in the Championship to be badly affected by this. They've postponed the next 2 matches and suddenly have a fixture backlog. And they're not the only ones. And when you look up and down the leagues now, there are a lot of games every single week which aren't being played. And that's leading people to suspect that maybe there could be a break coming up to kind of get football out to the firing line and allow things to be done safely again. Do you think it could happen, and B, do you think it should happen?
It definitely could happen. I mean, I think as has been said so many times, everything is so unprecedented right now. I think you can't rule pretty much anything out. So, I mean, I do think that at the top level, certainly that it'll be a last resort, because, I mean, there is mass testing, isn't there? I think it's only recently been agreed that will happen lower down, and that probably has been a big part of the problem for the lower league sides, because if they're not mass testing and then someone gets it, then obviously there's a chance everybody else will. Whereas obviously at the top level, at least if they're picking up people without symptoms, then there's a chance they can isolate and it won't spread as easily. But I mean, it has happened in the Premier League. Newcastle had an outbreak. Obviously Villa have got one now. So I mean, it is, it's starting to cause problems, and I think we'd be naive to suggest otherwise. I mean, the Swans have been quite lucky, and a couple of our players have gone down with it, and they've all recovered quite well by the sounds of it, thank God. So, but obviously we haven't had any games actually called off for it yet because of the opposition either. So, it's getting difficult, isn't it? Should it be paused? I mean, if it does get a lot worse, then maybe it should be, to be honest. But the problem is, I mean, we were discussing this before we came on, that obviously there just isn't much room in the season, is there? I mean, there's the Euros there as well. What are they going to do? Everybody's bound by TV contracts. I'm not saying that that's the most important thing, but unfortunately, the clubs will do that. That is the case, and I think they will. Only as an absolute last resort will they call things off, really. So it's going to be difficult, isn't it? It's going to be easier probably for League One and League Two, because they could probably have a break for a little while, and obviously they're not going to have players who are going to go to the Euros. So they could, in theory, get the season done by the end of June, because that's when most contracts expire. So if they have to push it back by 6 or 7 weeks, then they could get away with it. But it's a lot harder in the Premier and the Championship, I think. So what you just don't know is the honest answer. But I mean, there hasn't really been any hint of it at this stage being particularly close to being called off. So you'd have to think that it really is going to be a last resort if we are going to go down that route, and it might be a case of it'll only happen if stronger government rules come in terms of lockdown. So, and that seems unlikely to me. So I don't think you're going to see it stop, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen. I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think football's going to need to be pushed into it more than doing it, voluntarily, because football's been pretty unflexible in some ways during this this pandemic. You know, the real desire to stick as closely to the original calendars as possible. You know, kicking off the season in September when, you know, the previous season had only finished a month earlier, and you know, in the Premier League you had teams in the Champions League in August, and then kicking off the new Premier League season in September. You know, so it was a, you know, and just the sheer volume of matches in a very short space of time, you know, the pressures that puts on players' bodies. I don't get the desperation to stick that rigidly to the original calendar, but now that decision has been made, you know, things work around that. Like you said, the European Championships are going to be in the summer, apparently. You know, who knows if they will be played still and in what format. But that poses a problem for the Premier League and probably for the Championship as well, because there are quite a number of Championship players who will be hoping to play in that competition. And if the season clashes with the Euros, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that the national sides would have priority and would be able to demand that the players are released, which obviously would not help a lot of clubs in the Championship, particularly up the top end of the league. It's less of a problem in League One, League Two, and I think, you know, when you look at the state of League One right now, for anybody who's not up to date with it, only Burton Albion have played all of their fixtures to date, all 23 matches. So they're the only club in League One that have reached the halfway point. So they've played 23 matches, but there are quite a few clubs who've played fewer than 20. And one of them is Accrington Stanley, who've played 17. So that's 6 matches that they've had called off for various reasons. It's not just COVID, obviously there's weather, etc. But still, there are so many matches which have been cancelled in League One. And that means, of course, that they've got to be squeezed in then to what was already a totally congested second half of the season. So Accrington Stanley have got to find 6 slots in the calendar, basically, to play these games. And that's, you know, assuming there won't be any more postponements or cancellations on their part, which we definitely can't guarantee. So where they're going to find time to play these matches before the end of the season, I have no idea. And you have to ask what kind of toll it'll take on players' bodies playing that volume of football. It is mad, really. But I think sometimes football can have this kind of sense of self-importance, which isn't really deserved at the end of the day. As much as we say, you know, football is important to all of us, and God knows it's you know, done a world of good for me during lockdown, actually having football to take my mind off things. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got players dropping like flies, you know, catching this virus left, right, and centre, and then potentially passing it on to more people, you know, you do have to ask the question: are we going to have a break in the coming weeks? I definitely don't think it can be ruled out, unfortunately. We'll have to wait and see. We're just, you know, spitballing at the moment, hypothesizing, but it has to be seen as a possibility. But what kind of impact that'll have further down the line, God knows. Moving on, Steve, the Swans are back in league action at the weekend, away against Barnsley. We're starting the second half of the season now. It's getting a bit serious. The Swans started second in the table. There was a chance that we'd started third, or even fourth, I think. But Bournemouth tonight have drawn against Millwall, which is a surprise result. So they've missed out on the opportunity to jump above us in the table. Brentford were due to play against Bristol City tomorrow as we are recording, but their matches are obviously cancelled. So we go into the match second in the table, and we're playing against a team who we've already beaten once this season. But I'd expect this to be a different game to the one that we played earlier on the season, which was, let's face it, an absolutely horrendous match of football to watch if you're a neutral. We won quite comfortably, but the stat that I'll always remember for that match is the pass completion rates. 49% pass completion rate for Barnsley, 39% for Swansea. I take it we're going to see some slightly better passing this weekend.
Well, I would hope so, because, like I say, their startling stats on the pitch would have contributed to that somewhat. But yeah, I mean, I'd expect a better game. To be fair, Barnsley are going quite well, aren't they? They're up in ninth in the table, which is a lot higher than they probably would have expected to be. So it's going to be, I think it is going to be quite a difficult game for us. I mean, I know we're always, confident of us doing well because of our defensive record, but this definitely isn't going to be an easy game for us by any means. Barnsley are quite a nice side to watch, but so that might suit us. I think they might come on to us and maybe open the game up a bit, which will hopefully suit us. But this is going to be a difficult game, and obviously we've got 2 away games coming up now. It's going to be interesting to see where we are at the end of this, because both of them are going to be quite tough, I think. But Barnsley probably an overachieving side, I would say. Probably a side we'd have expected to have been lower in the table, really. But I think it's going to be an interesting one on Saturday night, really. Hopefully we'll have a couple of players back as well, won't we? Because I think the break for the cup probably did come at a good time, as I said on the previous podcast, really, because we had a couple of injuries, and hopefully we'll have some of them back by the time we play on Saturday.
Yeah, hopefully. And like I said, Barnsley, they're not a bad team. They are, open and they try to attack. I don't think they gave really fair representation of themselves when they came down to the Liberty, when they were pretty toothless, really, and didn't look like scoring at any point, really. But I think that's an unfair representation of how they usually play. But one thing I will point out is that they're remarkably consistent. They beat the kind of the poorer teams in the league, and they lose to the better teams in the league. They've lost to all the top 6 teams they've played so far this season. So that is a bit of a criticism from them. It's a bit of the kind of Bielsa debate of should you kind of adjust your style of play when you come up against the better teams in the division and try to stop them from playing a bit. It's not something that Barnsley usually do, and they can end up paying a price for it. But one player which I don't think played in the last game, but has had a fantastic season for them, is left back Callum Styles, and he's back fit now, so that should make a difference. But we, like you said, have got a few players coming back, hopefully from injury as well. So I surely, Steve, it's a case of trying to maintain the performances that we saw before the FA Cup match against Reading in the when we were unlucky to draw, and in the fantastic win against Watford. Surely that's what we're hoping to see from the side.
Oh yeah, that's got to be what we're aiming for, because we played very well in both of those games, and we were unlucky not to take 6 points, really. So we set the standard, really, and that's what we want. I mean, if we but I think the bare minimum what we're looking for is to be tough to score against, isn't it? That's our biggest strength, really. So if we can go there and get a clean sheet, obviously we're going to come away with some sort of positive result, aren't we? But hopefully we can do some damage. I mean, Jamal Lowe has been on great form recently, for example, hasn't he? So we'd like to think that we can go there and get a goal. And like I said, defensively we are very tough to beat then, so that will give us a pretty good chance of winning, I thought. So but we want to see, ideally similar performances to the last 2 league games. I mean, if we play like that most weeks, in general, you are going to win most of the games, I would have thought.
And a lot of the players have had a break now, so there's no tiredness or anything like that. What are there any changes that you would make to the team that played so well against Watford? Are there any players that you would like to see come back into the fold?
Probably not, to be honest. I mean, if Bennett is fit, then he should come back in. But other than that, I don't think I would make a change, really. I mean, what we've been doing has been working quite well, isn't it? With the 3 deep in midfield players, which in general I'm not a big fan of. But if it's working, then why change it, really? So, I think I would stick with it. I mean, Dan there, as you said, didn't impress against Stevenage, and you always think he might be a bit lightweight away from home, so I wouldn't pick him, really. So I think I'd leave things as they are.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think at the risk of taking the Neil Harris approach, don't change a winning team. But I think the performance against Watford was so good. I'd like to see us keep that. can I trouble you for a prediction? Are we going to get another win on the road this time against Barnsley?
It's quite a tough one to predict this. So I'm going to go to my default of 1-1.
Do you know what? I think Barnsley, they'll be open, they'll give us chances. The form that Jamal Lowe's in at the moment, I think he'll appreciate that. I mean, he gave them a torrid time the last time they played. His speed was way too much for them. So I'm actually going to go for a repeat of the scoreline earlier on in the season, a 2-0 win for the Swans, albeit this time hopefully with some more entertaining football than we saw the last time. We've got another match to look forward to then. The following Tuesday, they come thick and fast. Oh, before we go on, can I just bring something up? The match on Saturday, Steve, is a 7:45 kickoff on a Saturday night. What is your opinion on that?
That's a good question, actually, with a 7:45 kickoff. I'm not actually too sure. I've always liked the 5:30, and I think you're sort of similar. I mean, a 7:45, I think it's obviously at the moment it doesn't really matter, does it, because of the situation we're in, but I probably wouldn't be massively fussed on a 7:45 if things were normal, because I mean, by the time the game's over, then it is getting quite late. I mean, if you're having a night out or something, for example, then you've missed out on valuable time where you would be in the pub normally. So probably not huge in it, if I'm honest. I mean, away from home is probably even worse, isn't it? Because obviously you won't get back till quite late. So I think it's one of them. It's quite reasonable if there's a game on at that time. I'm quite happy to sort of watch it, but I'd probably rather not go to it. Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah. I'm kind of torn on it. I can see the advantages. If it was a home game, I think it would be a really good kickoff time. I can imagine, you go down, you spend an entire afternoon in the pub, and if you are still able to stand at the end of that, you can go watch the Swans then at 7:45, and then that gives you a bit of time to sober up then before you go out in the evening then. So it works out well as long as you're not absolutely shattered by then. Away, that's a bit of a trek on a Saturday, isn't it? On the other hand, if it's somewhere nice, and no offence to Barnsley, I'm not going to include Barnsley in this. There are worse towns, but I'm thinking more kind of, there are some fantastic away days that you can have. I'd imagine, for example, you go away to somewhere like, you love Newcastle, Steve. I mean, if you went away to Newcastle and had an entire Saturday afternoon in the pubs there, and then went to watch the football in the night, and then went out again, I'm sure you'd enjoy that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, within reason, but then you've got to walk up however many flights of stairs after a day in the pub.
Actually, that's a health hazard. Health and safety would not like, thousands of drunk fans walking up those steps. My God. Yeah, it's just an interesting one. Like I'm one of these people. You get like 3:00 purists in football, the people who think football should be played at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and that is the time for football. And I've always thought those people are sad because there are better times than 3:00 in my eyes. I'm just wondering if 7:45 on a Saturday evening counts as a better time to watch football than 3 p.m. I'm not sure. I still say, obviously, 5:30 on a Saturday is the ultimate time to schedule a football match. And if I had my way, all football matches would kick. Well, not all of them, obviously, but the standard time for a football match would probably be 5:30. That may be my unpopular opinion if we were doing one this week, but I think 7:45 may be a little bit late, but it's an interesting one. Let's see how it works. It's actually a later kickoff time than the one we'll have against Blackburn, which will be on a Tuesday night. That kicks off at 7 p.m. Another team, Steve, that we've beaten already this season. This one was a good game and a good performance by the Swans, but one which could have gone either way. Blackburn are the league's joint top scorers, and I remember when we played them earlier on the Liberty, they had their chances, didn't they?
Yeah, they did have their chances. I mean, Tony Mowbray's sides have always been, sides that like to go on the front foot and like to create chances. So I think that's what they did against us, really. I think they were, it's probably a game that could have gone either way. We did play well on the day. It was one of our better performances. But Adam Armstrong, for example, did have some chances, didn't he? So I think it's going to be, and that'll be a tricky one as well. I mean, I think they're 11th in the table at the moment, so I think they probably leak too many goals is their problem. They don't seem to have a massive problem scoring them, but I'd describe Blackburn as probably the ultimate championship team that you feel on their day could beat anybody, but are also probably capable of losing to anyone as well. So they're quite unpredictable. So it's probably tough to say how that one will go really, but I mean, you'd always like to think we'd have a chance of scoring against them, so a clean sheet really would be like a great opportunity for us to win the game, I would think. But yeah, they're a bit of a funny team, like I say, Blackburn. You don't know what you're going to get, I don't think.
Yeah, and they've not been on the best of runs. Earlier on the season, I had a feeling watching Blackburn like that their results didn't necessarily match performances, and their defence let them down. But they were, very exciting to watch. But it does feel like the last few games, the kind of their form has dipped. I mean, they won against Birmingham in the last game, but Birmingham were apparently awful, and Blackburn weren't that much better. But they've lost four of their last four of their last 9 games, something like that. Only won 2. No, it's more than that. But I mean, they're just basically not in the best of form of late. And I think heads just may have dropped slightly before that Birmingham game. And they also lost their recent FA Cup match against Doncaster. So, and when you look at the teams they've beaten this season, even though they've given a lot of teams a good game, the highest placed team in the table that they've beaten is Barnsley in 9th. So against the top teams in the division, they haven't done that well really. They've got a draw against Brentford, a draw against Middlesbrough, but other than that, they've lost to all the top teams in the division. So I think there has been just a little bit of pressure on Tony Mowbray of late. I think a few of the fans have just been getting a bit fed up of the poor game management and the lack of defensive solidity that they have. Nevertheless, I'm in agreement with you. Yeah, I think they are the kind of team that has the attacking ability to hurt any side. And Adam Armstrong is one of the best strikers in this division. There's zero doubt about that. And they've also got Bradley Dack back, who I think makes a big difference for them. He's kind of like a Michu figure. He looks a bit like Michu with the long hair and quite stocky figure. But he plays a bit like him too. He gets into the box late for kind of tap-ins from 10 yards out, etc. That kind of player. And I think he may make a big difference. But still, Steve, it's another game that you probably say, yeah, we should be looking to win this one, even though it's away, even though it's to one of the league's top scorers. The way we've been playing recently and where we are in the table, it's one where we've got to target 3 points.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? I think we probably have to look at it in terms of what is our aim now for the season. Are we aiming for top 2? You'd probably have to say being second in the league at this stage. Yeah, we probably are. So in that sense, we probably need to be targeting 4 points from these 2 games. That's how we have to look at it, really. I mean, it is ambitious targets, but that's the fact is it's hard to win promotion. So that's how we need to be winning. These, not all of these type of games, but we certainly need to be winning some of them. So I think Blackburn, like I say, if they're with them being on not the best of runs, we need to possibly take advantage of it. Really, I think that's the type of attitude that we need to show, because winning promotion in the top 2 isn't going to be easy. It's going to need obviously a lot of points, and from games like this, I think we have to be looking at it and thinking a draw is reasonable, but we need to try and win if we can, really.
Yeah, and obviously that match will come before an FA Cup match, where again presumably we would make a few changes, so not too much pressure to change the team. We should be able to put out the strongest available side to play against Blackburn. So 2 games here, Steve, that we can really go for and chance to pick up points and keep up the pressure at the top end of the table. Can I pressure you for a prediction for the Blackburn match?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm not really sure. I'm tempted to go 2-2 just because the last 2 years we've drawn there 2-2, so I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, I don't think we've got a great record at Ewood Park, have we? Something tells me we very, very rarely won there during.
I can't remember us winning there, but I was going to say, as I've said, we've seen a 2-2 draw there the last twice. And also the time before we lost there 4-2. So we do seem to score there. It's amazing. We scored 6 goals in 3 visits, and we still haven't had a win.
Yeah, they are the kind of team that's always entertaining to watch, Blackburn, whichever kind of division they're in. Yeah, you're always guaranteed a good a good bit of entertainment there. I'm just looking back through the records very quickly to see when the last time we won at Ewood Park was, and you have to go back all the way to 1971 for our last win at Ewood Park. That was back in the old Division 3, and we won 2-1 that day. So yeah, we don't have a particularly good recent record at Blackburn, although we did win there on another occasion in 1955 in the FA Cup 2-0. So yeah, basically wins at Ewood Park are few and far between. I don't think Blackburn are going to be pushovers, but a bit like Barnsley, I think they will give us chances. I think they will leave space for us to exploit, and we showed earlier on the season we've got the players to exploit them. So I'm gonna go for a I'm gonna put my neck on the line, say we're gonna get 2 wins out of 2 from these coming away games, and I'm gonna say that we're gonna get a 2-0 win at Ewood Park. Am I getting a bit too carried away, Steve?
Maybe, but I think I've been more pessimistic than everybody all season, really. So, I do hope that you're right. But if we get 6 points, that really would be tremendous, wouldn't it? So, yeah, let's be. I think you would take 4 though, in the same way that I would.
I definitely would take 4. Yeah, I don't think you can turn down 4 from 2 decent sides who are full of threats. So we'll have to wait and see, but hopefully we can see a level of performance similar to the ones that we saw against Reading and Watford before we had a break in the league for the FA Cup. That's what we're hoping for. Hopefully the Swans can keep up that pressure at the top of the table and keep knocking on the door of the Premier League. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us at the end of next week, when we'll try and get another podcast out ahead of the FA Cup match against Nottingham Forest. Until then, thank you very much for joining us.